This is ABTV, Animal Bites Television. For animal lovers, by animal lovers.
Hey, Brian from SnakeBytes here. Today I'm going to give you the top 10 things that you need to know to be a successful reptile breeder. You're watching SnakeBytes. I don't think it's a secret to know that I breed reptiles for a living. It's how I pay my bills. It's basically how I keep this whole thing running. And when there's snakes like this, like a fire pin super stripe, that's just an amazing animal that we sell for $2,000 or $3,000, or an animal like this beautiful fire spinner blast. I mean, just take a look at this. And again, this is a multi-gene animal, so we're going for things that are very elusive and beautiful that obviously go for kind of big money, right? And even you can go up from there to something like this Bongo Woma Lesser Pinstripe. It's kind of a new mutation out there, and this animal can go for $15,000. That's right, it's hard to imagine that a snake can sell for $15,000. Well, here it goes even more. This is a scaleless head ball python. Again, when you breed these guys together, you're going to produce the scaleless ball python, and these have a price tag of $50,000. Now, why am I talking to you about the value of these animals? It's because the number one thing I want to start telling you about is, although it's okay to make money, you should never put money before the animals. You should never work with animals on any level, especially breeding reptiles, if it's just for the money that you're seeking for. Because I tell you what, animals are little living creatures. Even this little feisty bugger, he's a beautiful animal. But the fact is that you can never put a dollar bill on a life like this feisty guy here. What a gorgeous snake. BHB Reptiles was opened in 1989, but how many years was it a hobby before turning into an actual business? A, 3, B, 5, or C, 7? Go ahead and answer down below in the comments and check back later in the show to see if you have the right answer. For this week's Reptile Report, we'll be highlighting monitor lizards. Go ahead and check out the URL down below or click on the link in the description. Number 2 would be, make sure you have everything that you need to be as successful as you can. When you're breeding reptiles, there's a whole ton of things that you'll never really think about. Let's take, for instance, a snake hook. You know, a really nice hook like this could cost up to $100. You're gonna need caging. A rack system like this is about $2,500. You're gonna have to make sure that you have the space to house animals. It's really easy to buy a baby rack, and then when they get to adulthood, you have no space to put an adult rack. So make sure you have the proper housing for an animal through its entire life. You need equipment, things like tongs or hemostats. You need thermostats so that you can control your heat panel. You need to have a good rodent supplier or cricket supplier. And lastly, make sure that you have enough money to survive until you are potentially profitable. It can take a tremendous investment of time and money to buy a collection of snakes, to get them to the size to where they can actually produce and potentially make you a profit. If you start with no money in the bank, you're probably gonna fail because you need to have that capital to get you to profitability. Next up would be, have great business sense. I realize that the majority of us, myself included, started as a hobby. And then it kind of prospered into a business. And I always say that probably one of the hardest things to do is to switch your hobby to a business, because you do things because you love them, not for the money, right? So when you change to a business, it's a completely different animal. So it's kind of that between leading with your heart and leading with your mind. I'll be honest with you, here at BHB, things like boa constrictors that I just typically don't breed really well, I still keep. I have tons of animals in this collection that never make me $1. Things like Macklot's pythons, Calabar burrowing pythons, alligators, and the list goes on and on and on. That's because I'm a passionate hobbyist. but at the same time, if you want to be successful, try to limit those numbers as best as you can and make sure that the majority of your animals are showing you some sort of profit. Again, it's something that I struggle with tremendously here at BHB. If I would put more business sense into every decision I'd make, I'd be way more profitable. But the fact is, I just love my animals so much, it's hard for me to look past the fact that this Sunglow Arabesque boa is just such a beautiful animal, even if it never makes me $1. So people ask me, what should I go to college for? I often tell them, make sure you get a business class or a complete business course in there, because knowing about business is way more important than typically knowing about the animals. You're going to figure out the animal part every day working with them, but the business part, you can really take your lumps. So make sure that you're a good business mind. Next up would be responsible. When you're getting into any animals, and certainly reptiles, your ability to be responsible not only is important for the animal's health and well-being, but also for the health and well-being of the entire hobby. Now, the giant snakes like Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons like this girl here are really giants, and not everyone can keep them, but they're pretty relatively available. So before you decide to take that leap, make sure that you're going to be a responsible owner, and that goes for even keeping venomous snakes. If you're responsible and you have the knowledge and education to keep those venomous animals, there's nothing wrong with it, but you have to be responsible, because your actions can really affect the future of the hobby. Which brings me to my next point, education. So if you wanted to go into business selling snakes or reptiles for a living, don't think for a second that your only job is to sell animals. As a matter of fact, I think that's the least important job that you have. Education may very well be the most important thing that you can do to be a successful business. First off, you want to educate your client, the person that's buying an animal like this coral snow corn snake. You want to make sure that they have the right housing, the right temperatures, the ability to care for that animal, and everything that they need to know. That means that you might have to take several phone calls before you even get a sale, and then several more after you get that sale. But that's very important that you're educating your client so that they have a great experience buying an animal from you or from anybody. Lastly, you want to educate the people around you. People that fear snakes, try to educate them. We can overcome people's fears of these beautiful animals by educating them. So I'm constantly putting education above almost anything else I do when it comes to a reptile business. Next up would be to find a good veterinarian. You know, this Kenyan sand boa is a perfect example of why we need good vets. Now, it started to have a little bit of a respiratory infection, and we tried to increase the humidity, increase the heat a little bit, and tried to kick it that way. But you can see that it's starting to get thin. There's a lot of cake up in the mouth. It's not mouth rot, but certainly that saliva that's built up is caking that bedding. We'll probably have to move it onto a different substrate and a trip to the vet to potentially get some antibiotics. Now, what you have to realize when you're working with animals of any kind is that approximately 3% of every population is going to come down with some sort of ailment, whether it's a cancerous cyst, an impacted tooth, an injury, or a respiratory infection, or whatever it might be. You're going to come across things that end up needing to see a vet. So it's important to find a good vet and get a relationship with them. That way, when something is going wrong, you can take it to that person. They can help you through and get your animal back to health. Next up is to have fun, guys. We're not splitting the atoms here, and anyone that follows me knows that all my crazy props that I use from time to time in Snake Bites, or if you follow me over on Twitter or Instagram, you're gonna see me do crazy stuff from time to time. I don't take myself so serious, and I know some other reptile breeders kind of look at me and think, man, Brian, you should act more responsible in the fact that I'm always goofing around. But the fact is, it's about having fun. Life is about having a good time. We're breeding animals, we're living the dream, we love what we do. Why not enjoy it? So make sure to not get all stuffy and serious and have a good time with such beautiful animals. Number 8 is to be patient. These projects sometimes take years to develop, or a specific animal like these diamond pythons might take you a decade before you can actually get them. Believe it or not, I was dreaming about owning diamond pythons almost 15 years ago, and I never owned one until last year. So again, patience is important. I know everyone that wants to get into things wants to do it right now. They want to get to the point where they're successful tomorrow. The truth is, you have to learn to crawl before you can walk. And sometimes it'll take many generations to eventually get to the goal that you want. Some of the coolest projects that I've worked with have taken me 8 or 10 years to finally produce what I wanted to produce. So if I didn't have patience, I would have given up on those projects long before. Remember, as much as you want to achieve, it's only going to work if you carry on patience. Always work with animals that you love and don't chase projects. One of the things that so many people do is they work with what everyone else is working with because they think that's the most popular thing. I always say that the best thing that ever happened to the reptile hobby was ball pythons. The worst thing that ever happened to the reptile hobby was ball pythons. Now, I was working with these amazing, majestic animals before anyone really even wanted to work with them because I loved them to death. And I still love them with all of my heart. The problem is that the success of the ball python became so popular that people that hated ball pythons started working with them because it was the in vogue thing to do and they thought they could just make money on it. I remember seeing things like just leopard geckos and ball pythons. The fact is, work with the animals that you want. Don't chase projects. If you're chasing a project and you're not enjoying working with them, it's not going to work out for you. So I always go after things that I'm really passionate about, even if it's not a popular choice. And you guys know that my latest kick is blue-tongued skinks, and I'm continuing to get all kinds of neat ones. I wanted to show you this little girl right here. Take a look at her. She's not so little, but this is an Erie Jaya blue-tongued skink, but not a normal one whatsoever. We're calling it a zigzag because look at that back pattern on this animal. Now that is one gorgeous animal. There's not a lot of mutations out there in blue tongues really, especially in America. So the opportunity to get into a cool new project and hopefully prove it out is really exciting. But again, I'm not going to chase the project. I'm going to let it come to me. I'm going to buy the animals that I can buy when I can buy them. I'm not going to overpay for them, and I'm not going to go running after things that I don't love. So make sure, guys, to always work with the things that you just love to work with, because that way, even if you're financially not profitable, you're going to profit from the experience. And lastly, guys, be passionate. Everything that I do with animals has to do with my passion for those animals. Remember, snakes don't take vacations, snakes don't take holiday. So you're gonna be into work on Christmas and New Year's Eve and Thanksgiving and every other holiday. And if you're not passionate about those animals, you're gonna learn to hate it. So as long as you love the animals and show that passion for every part of your business, not only for the care of the animals, but the care of your customer, educating the public, and continuing to just express how awesome these animals are, you're going to be successful. So guys, if you follow these 10 simple rules and live them to your core, you're going to be a successful business. I wish you all the luck.
BHB Reptiles was opened in 1989, but how many years was it a hobby before turning into an actual business? If you said B, 5, you're 100% correct. Good job.
So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the show and took a little bit out of it if you decide to make a career with breeding reptiles. And as always, I'm Facebooking and tweeting my way through everything that happens here at BHB. So make sure to follow me over at SnakeBytesTV. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites.
Hi, I'm Peter Birch, an Aussie bloke who loves wildlife. My respect for nature started when I was a young boy in rural New South Wales. Since then, it's exploded into an obsession. New episodes only on AnimalBytesTV.